everyone. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure. We are a weekly podcast dedicated to sincere, in-depth investigations into the paranormal, supernatural, and the metaphysical, with a special focus on the UFO topic. We take a sincere, analytical approach, thoroughly evaluating each case and its implications. Our discussions go beyond the surface as we engage with researchers, investigators, and experiencers to explore the deeper layers of their testimonies. We strive for high-resolution analysis, carefully examining evidence, patterns, and perspectives that challenge conventional thinking. If you're looking for a podcast that seeks deeper understanding, you're in the right place. Please be sure to like and subscribe and follow to receive notifications when new content is made available. You can also visit us at www.paranomalypodcast.com for more content and information, including all our social links. Thank you again for watching or listening, and we hope to see you on the next episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure.
Okay, I don't know where our main host is, but okay.
Hello. For some reason, I didn't put myself back.
Yeah, that really threw me off. Yeah, 'cause, I'm normally the one that introduces the guest.
Right. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight for this episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure. We have a great guest. His name is Peter. Is it Slattery?
Yeah, that's it. Slattery. Yep.
Slattery, a world-renowned experiencer whose encounters with extraterrestrial and ultra-terrestrial beings have been witnessed by hundreds. Pete shares his mission to awaken the master within each of us through connection, contact, and consciousness. Pete, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Todd, Jim, thanks for having me on. Pleasure.
So, Jim, go ahead and get us started out here.
I guess we'll just dive straight into the experiences, and feel free, as we're going through the experiences, Pete, to any kind of overall sort of overarching lessons that you learn from it, or something that pertains to spirituality in any way. We can kind of go back and forth, but let's start with the experiences. And if I'm not wrong, so the very first experiences were when you were 8 to 12 years old, and you were having this situation where something was sort of materializing into your bedroom, a gray alien, right? Some type of gray alien.
Well, I didn't know what it was at first, and I'll just correct there. So the telepathy, I believe, started around 7 with a specific being that I didn't know who it was until years later. There is a handful of experiences that happen, I think, around 4, but they're so vague yet vivid that I couldn't tell you except what I saw. But it's just like coming to, like one example, coming to during a nap in the afternoon, and there's been like people in my room, and I know who they are now, but I can't remember any conversation, just that, and then I'm going back to sleep. So there's not really much to it. But what was occurring was I moved into a specific home that my mother and stepfather actually built. And so this is how I know the time frame, because I didn't think about this until years later, looking back. And so it was between the ages of 8 and 12. And what happened the first time was that I woke up, the room's lit up, not super bright, but it's lit up that I can see. And what I would describe is Kurt Cobain's face about like a foot from my face.
So Kurt Cobain, the lead singer of
Nirvana.
And you recognized him at that? You knew exactly who that was, like, or was it in retrospect that you figured out it was Kurt Cobain? You knew it.
I knew.
Yeah,
because look, I've been playing guitar. My brother's an awesome guitarist, and I've been playing. I'm usually known as a drummer though for rap and in guitar and everything else. I liked Nirvana at that age. It wasn't really till I hit it off with them with Unplugged even more. But when we calculated dates back, Kurt Cobain must have been alive at that time when we've looked at it, which is unique as well. So what we could look at that perspective of. They've used a mask, a guise of something. Again, I'm not sure what was happening at this time. Of somebody that I admired, that I liked, as a safety net. I learnt years later, but I said to him it didn't work. So
right, because it was from the get-go. From the get-go, it was not consistent, right? It was sort of fluctuating in and out between Kurt Cobain and this gray alien.
Not at that time. Not the first time.
Okay.
Not the first. Yeah. So what happened is that occurred, and I pulled the sheets up, turned, freaked out, and I went. It's like there's an energy associated with all intelligences that I can tell you when I've gone to haunted houses and helped out, when I'm dealing with extraterrestrial, ultra-terrestrial, masters, angelics, and stuff that we don't even know of, that I'm sure I've interfaced with that I don't even know of. Mm-hmm. That there is an energy that hits the body almost like it tenses up. Every part of the being is electrical. Like I don't think I've used a tense machine, but I've got something here like a skeiner where the muscles sort of tense up if you put it on a certain part. The whole body will do that, but it will do it at different sort of intensities depending on the intelligence that's in your field.
And is it stemming from fear at all, that tenseness? Or I've heard some people describe it where they seem to imply that no, it's just like the vibration, when you're as the vibrational being that you are, at the level that you are, when you encounter something of a higher vibration, it's just intrinsically intense like that. So it wasn't because you were just freaked out. It was something about the energy itself, or the interaction between those two energies.
No, and it's a good question. I think it's partly that, and I think it's partly that there's something that I can tell with my heart, or there's a feeling here that if it's something that is negative, demonic, archonic, reptilian, it feels like my heart's being pulled down, and I can feel that energy, and it's a different energy, but it's similar, that the whole body's feeling that. Mm-hmm. If it's angelic, an enlightened intelligence, you've got the whole body being sort of lit up with that energetic sensation, but it's blissful to the point that with one of the beings, the Elohim, I'll have tears. You can't, it's the bodily reaction.
Say that again. One of the beings, the Elohim, has what?
Well, they're one intelligence that I interface with. What happens with them is that I'll naturally have tears.
Oh, tears. Okay.
You can't help it. It's not that you're bawling or you're happy, you're sad, you're blissed out, but you can't help but cry because of the love that you feel. So I'm feeling it in the heart space as well in a different way. And then when you're dealing with past, we could say, but people that have been human once, fairies, elementals, different types of intelligences, even trickster intelligences, they will, from my experience, portray an experience of how you're reacting. So you're reacting positively, you'll get a positive experience. You react fearfully, you'll be fearful. But what I can tell you is that I've got practice with this to an extent that I see a lot of my experiences, or when I'm helping people psychically, is boot camp. I learned to do this over time. Just like there was a period where almost every night for a short period, it was a few months, but I was being attacked, choked, scratched. That what it did, I started to see the opportunity of me, but basically being able to clear, heal, and interface with the dark intelligence and move it on. I saw it as boot camp, where most people I know couldn't deal with that. But because of the experiences that I had, it was enough for me to move through that. And love ended up being the absolute key to dealing with that energy, which sounds airy-fairy, but it actually is. Mm-hmm. But with these beings, getting back to, and there's a lot we can go into, so I'm going to try to not jump all over the board because this is going back. I'm 42 now, so we're going back quite a number of years. And again, I didn't really recall much of this until the teenage years, thinking more to it. But what happened was there was an experience. I can't give you a number because I think it was maybe 1, 2, 3 times, at least more than once. I'm sure at least 2 that I purely saw Kurt Cobain in the room. That's it. So the reaction was open eyes. The room's lightly lit up. I see Kurt Cobain. I've got this energetic sensation. I'm almost tensing up, but it's not like with the negative intelligence. I would pull the sheet up, turn, and I would literally go into my heart space, praying for whatever this is to go, to get out of my room. All right. So what happened?
With that being, did you get your heart sinking feeling that you described with this particular being?
No. It's like I can remember to this day. So it because it's not negative, but I didn't know what it was, especially when I saw what it was or what it portrayed, because even what I saw later isn't what it was. So it's like, I'm assuming you guys have had an experience where your heart beats that hard from like an experience, whether it's you could see an accident or hear a gunshot or something, that you can feel each beat like go through you. That's what it was like.
Right. Or like after you just like ran really fast and then, that kind of thumping.
Even more intense, but very similar. I could feel that going through me. And then
right,
I'd wake up and it's the next day. So one time what happened was I'd wake up, and this time the being was probably like 6 foot away. So it wasn't right here this time. It was further away, Kurt Cobain. And the room was more lit up. And from now on, the room was lit up all the time, like really lit up to where like I could still see posters at times on the room. Sometimes I've got memory of no posters and I'm thinking maybe I'm somewhere else, because the crafts can overlap the bedroom like an apparition, like a ghost, and they can resonate you on board.
Yeah, that's so interesting. That's the first time I never thought about that, but that's just completely plausible, given what we know about, how they're, phasing in and out of dimensions. Yeah, the craft could be right there, and they could just literally vibrate you, I think is the term you've used before, right onto the craft and onto the table.
Well, a lot of the time you're not even on anything, except what's happening is they can start to resonate to you to the point that you're still on your bed looking up. You think you're on a table, you're still on your bed. Mm-hmm. Or they can interface. So the analogy I'll give here, and I've got photos of this where the crafts are in apparition form, and people have experienced it here at the sanctuary. We've even like up to a month and a half ago, we had a whole group walk around a cigar craft, and you could touch the peripheral of the craft, feel the difference, see the beings in the peripheral vision in apparition form, like a ghost. So for newcomers to this perspective, imagine, we'll just use the normal stuff. Let's say a flying saucer in apparition form, like a ghost. It can land on you. Now, there's a few ways that this interfacing can take place, but what's common is either a very deep, almost unaudible whoomp, 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 and it permeates through you. And sometimes mixed with that is it's almost like a very high-pitched Tibetan bowl singing winding noise. Very high pitch. Now,
and that's an indication of what, Pete? That
there's a craft landing on me, or they're in my presence. Yeah. Now the thing is, I can't tell you how many people have contacted me with me saying that, going, my experiences make sense now. How they the mechanics of it. To a certain point, it makes sense. Now, I've spoken to Australian and Native American elders about this, and the reaction was, that's how it works. Like, people think they're going to this star system or space, and they haven't gone anywhere in some cases. So what happens is they can start to resonate now with the pineal gland, and you're having a full-blown experience that's as real with your eyes, but even more vivid, because now they're interfacing with the pineal gland. And you may not even be physically taken on board. It's just the way that this specific race intelligence chooses to interface. Depending on their technology, they can start to basically get you to resonate with the craft to where you can physically be pulled on board, or they can even pull your consciousness on board, or they could pull the consciousness on board and put it into an avatar.
Yeah. So why do you think it seems like with the typical abduction experience, they're not doing that. Whatever species is responsible.
I think a lot of the time they are doing methods. One of those methods, I think they are in a lot of cases.
What seems like with the normal recollection of someone's experience, they're brought out, through the wall or the window, and then into something which is at a distance, which is sometimes in the sky, sometimes it's on the ground, and they're sort of floated out in an arc fashion over to a landing craft. But you think a lot of the times, unbeknownst to the experiencer, the craft is actually right there in the.
I'm very black and white this, because what you need to understand with this, and it's just my experience, my opinion, they're using in different forms of technology that are able to do very similar things. Instead of landing the craft on you, they can basically direct their technology at you to where it's still got the same thing. It can pull you through walls. It can pull you on board. A lot of the experiences I don't think are physical. I think a lot of the experiences are either, we could say, in different layers of the light body. And I'll give you an example with this, and we will get back to the first lot of experiences. But Namkai Norbu, who's a Tibetan Dzogchen master who's no longer with us, is known in the Tibetan circles. And I had many experiences in the early days not understanding the rainbow body connection. I do now, because I interface with beings that are of rainbow light. He teaches that the rainbow body teachings, which is where they shed the physical body through certain practices to get to the perfection body, the rainbow body, is being taught in 13 star systems. And I can tell you now from my experience that there are physical extraterrestrial intelligences and ultra-terrestrial intelligences which are local to us that may be on another bandwidth frequency that are of Earth, even extraterrestrials of Earth that have come here that are in another frequency. But they could be meditating I could be meditating here if I'm at that level and project my consciousness on another planet or even in an orb, and I'm not going anywhere. I'm projecting my consciousness, and yet it's physical and it's tangible to interface with.
Okay, so there's other dimensions. I've heard that there's a fourth dimensional region to Earth.
Mm-hmm.
But some people feel that there's not, right now anyway, a fifth dimensional. The Earth is kind of spanning the third and fourth dimension, and it may be sort of shifting into a fourth and fifth dimensional sort of range of space. Or what do you think about that? Do you think there's just one other sort of physical or higher dimensional aspect of Earth or plane of Earth, or do you think that there's many more than that? Or
I think a lot more, but I think it's so big and so vast that nobody's got it. Even when I go through the layers of the light body, I go through the dimensional, the density aspects and blueprints, I say I haven't got it, and I don't think anyone has. I think Dolores Cannon was very close because I didn't know at the time, but with one of the books that I wrote, Operation Starseed, I didn't know much about Dolores at the time, but the way that she was describing the New Earth and 5D, and then 4D, don't quote me, but from memory, it's been so long since I'd looked at any of her material, but 4D basically was just like non-existent. It's like we'll skip that and go into fifth. I think what we've got is frequencies around us of lower and higher intelligences, and you could say the lower astral would be where a lot of people go into that state when they leave this experience, including you've got lower astral entities and reptilians and certain things, and then you go into the higher intelligences. But I think all this is constructs we're putting into certain terminology to make something digestible that is so far out there that I think we actually know. I think we know it all in an unbounded state, but while we're in a human experience in the human vehicle, we are trying to convey things that aren't easily able to be conveyed.
Right. But do you think that the radio frequency analogy is fundamentally correct, though? That there's more than just the fourth and fifth,
I think it's
our sort
almost infinite.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the feeling that I've been getting. Actually, after reading for some reason, John Mack's abduction, I just had the sense that from some of the experiencers that there's many, many more planes than we think they are, and physical planes, not just, just one, third dimensional physical plane and then other, non-physical planes, that there's other just lighter, maybe physical planes that are right here.
I think it's close. Like from my experience again, and I can't prove a lot of this here. I got a lot of photos, physical trace, witnesses, videos, whatever, and I can't prove these things to a certain extent. But what I will say is that it's from my experience that humans and extraterrestrials would be the bottom 5%. Angelic intelligences would be the top 5%, and there's a whole other 90% of realms of intelligences that we don't even have a reference for, large majority in human terms, let alone that you can start to create your own thought form realms. That when you get to a certain form of consciousness, you can now divide from this consciousness God and create your own universe with its own planes and dimensions. And I was shown this. I had to stop there because that was so much for me to integrate.
So what led you to the feeling of we're in the bottom 5% and the angelics and higher dimensionals in the top 5%, and there's just this much more vaster spectrum in between? Why do you feel so certain that there's that many more layers or densities, frequencies in between? What experience or information in particular? Because that's new to me. I've never heard that. That seems like a completely different model. Like, wow, maybe we have like a lot further to go, to getting to like an ascended status, that would seem to imply, right?
When you're interfacing with certain intelligences, what I can say is that I've been shown this not just from a specific being, but a multitude of different beings, these constructs and the tuning in method, that when I'm tuning into them, if they're angelic, I can skip through that like pages in a book like that. I've been shown it as well. The first experience where I was shown a lot of this stuff was actually in a meditation that was being guided years later by angelic intelligences that I didn't understand. But Sheedy, one of the beings from the Pleiades, has explained this to me, and there's visual information that's shown when you've got a telepathic communication. So when you're linking, it's not like this now. It's like my consciousness can be merged with yours, and whatever you're thinking, I'm actually seeing, feeling, and getting the sensations of that simultaneously, to the point that within seconds you could convey years of information to me if it's highly advanced, to the point that you start to merge consciousness and there's now no questions. This is where it's hard to convey. I don't have many questions anymore. Not out of ego. It's just you get to a point that either it's going to present itself, or you can go to a certain level of consciousness where all that's sitting there, but it doesn't matter when you're in that state of consciousness, in a meditation, in a enlightening journey, or in the presence of some of these angelic, extraterrestrial, ultra-terrestrial, list goes on, intelligences. It just depends on frequency.
Okay, that's interesting. I just remember, I don't know if I'm sure you've heard of him, Alex Collier, saying that the extraterrestrials that he interacted with, and which I believe he thought were from Andromeda, it was expressed to him at some point that they didn't have all the answers, that they didn't even know exactly what God was, that there was still some mystery left as to the nature of God or where it came from, the origin of it. Do you think that does your perspective of these higher dimensional intelligences differ in the respect that you feel like they have all the answers, that they're interfacing with source, they're at that level where there's no more mystery, or what do you think about as far as...
there's still mystery. There's still mystery. They can merge with they still don't understand where the original source came from.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the way the Elohim, in conjunction with the angelics, in the experience I had, what they conveyed was there are still mysteries to us. And that rang so true, because if they were trying to mislead me or what have you, they would always have an answer they don't. Now, in terms of extraterrestrial intelligences, it's, of my opinion, working with over 5,000 people, that most people have experienced other realms, other worlds, extraterrestrial or other realms. Very rarely will I come across beings that have come directly from source that in those cases would have downloaded experiences from other people, as we could say background programs to handle an experience that they've got a pinpoint of awareness experiencing. So there's an aspect with this. What I'm trying to get to is, just because they're ET doesn't mean they've got all the answers. Extraterrestrial intelligences are still collectively and individually trying to ascend to new heights in soul evolution. Like I said, if it's physical in the way that it's physical for them, it's still in those bottom 5% of realms. It's not to belittle, if not.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is more harder for us to master physical, what we perceive as material worlds. So a lot of beings have gone through all those high states of consciousness down to elevate, losing oneself to refine oneself. But yeah, what I'll say, but just quickly so we don't miss it, is going back to those experiences. What happened over that one time where I said Kurt Cobain would appear like 6 foot away and the room's now lit up, is a vibration to where in between each flicker, I started to see what looks like a grey, but it's not. It's white. It's hard to give you an estimated height because I've seen variations in heights. I could probably say maybe 5 foot because I've seen 3.5, 5 foot, 7 foot ones. They're actually white. Eyes so black that it looks like you're looking into nothingness. The skin looks like the texture of cigarette ash. If you got ashed a cigarette and went like that just to smooth out, and there's that grainy, but even that third dimensional sort of pop sort of look to it.
So kind of like flaky a little bit, or fibrous,
even like an elephant.
So rough, a texture. There's some kind of texture.
Yeah, but extremely smooth. From later encounters. What was going through my head in those stages, because again, the energy hits you. It's almost paralyzing. In some cases, if it's dark intelligences, it will be paralyzing. This wasn't paralyzing. It was more, what in God's name is this? I wasn't, and I don't know why. I wasn't thinking extraterrestrial. I wasn't thinking demonic, and I wasn't thinking angelic. I just didn't know what in God's name this was, to the point to what I would do is pull the sheets up again and turn and pray to the universe, God, like, get this thing out of my room. Now, over time, there was sometimes up to 3 of them, but over, I don't even know how many years later, but let's say in more recent years, I later found out that that's not how they look at all. They're actually light beings.
And then what is that physical form then? Is it an avatar? Is it an already existent avatar that are on the ships that they transfer their consciousness into? Or what is the form? Or do they suddenly materialize in that? Or can they just sort of come through already in physical form? Or what do you think?
These specific beings, their mandate and operation is that they were created by Elohim for source, which there's variations of Elohim depending on their color, depends on the density that they regulate. There's Elohim beings that purely will create realms and put things in them, like where our planets and stars. We can say that there's a scientific model to how that was done, but the Elohim have done that as above, so below. They work in the constructs of the light blueprint. To understand this is to understand that everything is light, sound, and matter. Everything is consciousness that goes into a vibratorial state, which is sound. Sound creates light, light creates matter. They're at a level of consciousness to where they can do what they want because they understand that operation, because they were given in, we could say, their birthright and their mission, access to all that to do what they got to do, because this was relayed to me years ago that they're the guardians. Now, there's guardians of different types of beings that have been referenced as that. These beings, they're guardians in ways that they are regulators of all natural portals throughout the universe that includes stars. also natural portal sites on planetary or satellite bodies, even non-space-time bodies, which could be just in the middle of nowhere. Also, they're what we could say worker beings for the council of the whole, as it was put to me. Now, in some cases, when they do have vehicles, now what I'll tell you is that John Vivanco, who's done remote viewing for NASA and the FBI, and he's quite well known, and is in my film, he might not get the data on like names or where beings are from and things like that. He's experienced these beings. A number of people have physically experienced these beings, and they regularly pop in here still.
These white ones, we're talking specifically about the white ones, or
yeah, the white ones. Yeah, so they look like greys, and that's how a lot of people will experience them as well. But their ship, they don't need a ship, but when they've got a ship, which that video that you can see in the film where it's actually blinking, that Jason Glee's ex-UK Air Force and Aerospace analysed, and you can see the beings blink. I didn't realise until John Vivanco remote viewed that data that there was actually a number of them checking in on me. So he said it's not one being popping its head out, it's a number of them. And he said it's funny because their craft is like in apparition form. It's crashed into your house. They're all jumping out. Half of them are going to the fridge to grab cheese. They call them the cheese people. And the other half are checking in on you, and then they're taking turns. So I do know that when they come into third dimensional reality, they can take on the third dimensional state. So what goes with that? But they're able to traverse space and time. And when they're in a craft, the way it's been relayed to me, telepathically from them, is that it's more of an energetic mixture of their energies, projecting a field that protects them from outside vibrations so they can travel space-time in. It's like a light body. They can just go here, there. This is that type of intelligence. I'm not speaking for all extraterrestrial, ultra-terrestrial, or angelics for that matter.
Okay. In this particular... not gray, but gray type morphology being, did you say that it was a creation of the Elohim, or that this was the Elohim in this sort of vehicle?
Well, in a way you could say, because the way it's been explained to me is every single being's unbounded nature is an Elohim being. It's just, the way I use this analogy is, imagine my body is God, and each cell is every single soul in existence. Is working in unison, and a cell of this one intelligence that goes fractal. So the analogy I use for that part is, imagine my palm being your Godhead, your highest expression, that's your soul. It's resonating with the spirit, some might call the Holy Spirit, which now it's plugged into the main, it's got access to all that is. It's offshooting existences that are experiencing an extraterrestrial life, an ultra-terrestrial life. It could be on Earth, it could be a fairy, an elemental Bigfoot, all simultaneously. And we're perceiving it as past life or what have you. And some of our experiences, in my case, have even been with other aspects of me. But it all comes back to everyone's highest expression is being an Elohim being, no matter what they are.
Oh, okay. So Elohim, I mean, is that synonymous with the highest levels of consciousness in existence then? Or
well, I think it's, I don't know if you'd say highest, because I think it would depend on one's lens on what they would perceive as that. But when you even get into those high states of consciousness, there's still mysteries to them. I don't know where the original source come, because it's like I was showing, like it's like a universe, a God source created with its own planes and dimensions and universe. It will divide in two, and then there's beings in that will eventually replicate from that and create their own universe with their own planes and dimensions. They all don't know everything. So to me, it's like there's still these mysteries and trying to understand, but they do understand things to a certain extent on what I would describe as soul evolution. And where I try to come at this from is human potentiality. Human potentiality, because we are creator beings. And once you understand that we create our reality to an extent, but yet it's all one consciousness interfacing with itself, now the game gets complex, or more complex and more convoluted, because you realize everything's a reflection from within. Now, this is going to the greater extremities of things, but these intelligences understand that, and that I'm a projection of their own illusion as well. Like, this is where it gets very convoluted. So I know we're all going over the topic because everything ties in. Like, this is why I haven't watched television for 15 years. Yeah.
Real quick though, and then we'll get back to the experiences. And I think Todd will have some. Because you've had a lot of paranormal experiences too. I think of that sort.
Up until last night, it's every day. Yeah.
But you said we're creator beings. Are we all creator beings? Are all beings creator beings? Or are humans special in some kind of way in terms of their manifestation capacity?
We all are, but the way it's been revealed to me is that the human experience at this time would be like a pinnacle. And what I mean by that is that we seem to have trans-dimensional creator capabilities that not all intelligences have, from where we can be so dense and material to so etheric. So the way it was explained was that we're a conglomerate of many races. Basically, what's being created is a super being in the 3D realm, in effect, from manipulation from other races, that this wasn't sort of planned out, but this is what's happened. And with that has become such an amplification of human emotions of both positive and negative, that self-mastery and overriding that, because it's such strong emotions, is something that's sort of like, now you gain access to high forms of consciousness once you master the illusion of separation, but yet the emotional strength. Now,
yeah, that's the one thing that I've heard about us that may be distinct from other beings is our range of emotion. Connect that. I'm still confused though as to how you're connecting that into what you're saying. What is it about our emotions that enables our capacity or access maybe to differing planes?
Well, let's say this for a moment. It's actually limited. That's what's going on. And we still have access. So what I'll say by this is there was, from my understanding, reptilian intelligences introduced the R part of the brain to the human brain. Now, they'll say fight or flight response here, but there's doctors and people that say that the R part of the brain is quite recent. Now, some might say 16,000 years. I've seen others say over 100,000 years ago. I was told about, I think it was, don't quote me, I'm going back probably around 200,000+ years ago to 4, right? Now, what's in effect is that's a biological implant that fear, lust, negative energy, heightened emotion, the R part of the brain is triggered. This is a siphoning device energetically that feeds this, we could say, field and frequency that the fallen Elohim, which are the ones that didn't want to go back to source and stay out within it, which we could say is part of demonic forces, part of the elite, the cabal, this, that, the other, which I don't want to get too conspiracy, but they're also the ones that created an AI, which the reptilians see as a god. All right, so this is a duality of source. Go on, Todd, you're right.
Yeah, I have a quick question about these white grays. Are those white grays the same class of beings that show up during like a CE5 or contact meditations, or are they more specialized?
That is a case by case basis, I would have to say. Now, I couldn't even tell you how many CE5. I do IC. I've always called it IC, which is expanded CE5. The difference between originally CE5 was different. We've got a huge windstorm going on here. So I know that Jacques Vallée had a terminology for CE5, then Richard Haynes did, which started working with Dr. Gray from my memory. The difference between me and most people, and I work closely with James Gilliland with ESETI, and I've got ESETI Australia. He's got the well-known ESETI Ranch. But the difference is that I clear the space, create a sacred space, just like James does. Then I don't summon, I invite those that are in line with the awakening healing of humanity to connect. And then I go through a method called connecting to your spirit and ET guides, which is a form of telepathic exercise to interface. Now, the thing is, most people doing CE5 aren't doing what I've just said. And it's not that right or wrong, but I can tell you now, just like I'm sure you're well aware, if you go to a haunted location or you go and paranormal investigate and you don't know what you're doing in terms of spiritual protection and shielding, you can have stuff rock up that you don't want to rock up. So let's get that sort of aspect sort of seen there. But in terms of these beings rocking up, what I can tell you is that in some cases it can be ultra-terrestrials or local intelligences appear at these CE5 events that are picking up on the intention of the group, which is great. People are doing CE5, don't get me wrong at all. This is great. But in terms of these beings rocking up, it would be a case-by-case basis if or when they did, because there's some lady that I think Mary Rodwell knows that is catalogued or knows of over 100 types of grey species. And I've seen probably about 12 to 15 myself, give or take. I'd have to actually go through what I've experienced because it's been a lot. But I do tend to find that let's say on a soul level, if there's a number of people in that group, let's say connected to the Pleiades, or they all are, it could be Pleiadian rock up at that event. It could be Andromedan. So it's really a multi-layered thing of what and how and why appears at what events. Just like with the sanctuary here, there's sort of some normal regular visitors, especially when I'm by myself here or I've got friends and family here. But then with other groups, it can be totally different one week to the next week. Not better, not worse. Sometimes it'll be purely just light beings. It could be physical extraterrestrials. It could be a multitude of different forms of intelligences. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. But yeah.
Now, when you was little, I wanted to ask this a little bit ago. When you was little, did you have any kind of like paranormal experiences, like with ghosts, hauntings, things like that? Things that you would get these spirits that would try to connect with you. A lot of times people that have these extraterrestrial encounters also have had things happen when they were young, almost on a psychic level.
Brilliant question, and this is where it's going, which is, and I say this to a lot of people that come to me, because I didn't realize, and it was in my face, Pete, you might be psychic and not know that you're psychic. That's what I said to myself. And I see it with most experiences, if not all. We're all at different levels. Because what was happening was I was seeing stuff that apparently wasn't there throughout teenage years as well. I'd seen objects picked up, thrown, curtains picked up, and you go and check and the curtain's not even open. There's been a lot of paranormal experiences, because where this led up to was not just from UFO sightings and these experiences at a younger age. I started delving into paranormal investigation because there was no one in my area. I had no help. I went firstly in later years. So what happened was years went by with a lot of sightings, a lot of experiences, shadow beings, paranormal phenomena. And then all of a sudden in 2010, I mean, it's like a light switch turned on and it hasn't stopped since. And I mean, witnesses were there for the first spate of experiences, to where I contacted the Australian Air Services. I even contacted a lot of UFO groups. Nobody did anything except Mary Rodwell after years, probably 2-3 years into it. But the Australian Air Services said on 2 occasions, the airport shut. I'm in a very small town at that time, and there's no helicopters, planes, or anything. There's nothing there. But yet, and I'm telling them, like, I think in one case I sent them the footage, and they're like, nothing's there. And it's like, well, my friend's seeing it or other people are seeing it. I've got it on camera. In one of the bits of footage that ended up going on the news where I'm pointing at it, you see it go from dead still to just shoot off like that in a second. So before that even got to that extent, I was going to some of the most haunted places. Actually, one of the places is the most haunted place in Australia, at Durnee, which is the Monte Cristo homestead. Point Cook Homestead, Melbourne Jail, Beechworth Jail, Beechworth Asylum, a lot of sort of old sort of gold mining places and very historic places, which all seem to have, their own history. But I was also getting called to certain homes to work. What was going on back then was I was making the connection And I had to be very diligent and I had to be very thoughtful in the way that I was presenting this, which was I get called to a haunted location and I'm thinking, I think they're having ET contact. I don't think, and how do you break that? And what I'd usually find out, and I'm painting this with the broad brush, was that they've been watching Ghost Hunters, so the house was haunted, or they've been watching UFO Hunters back at the time because that was out, and I'm having an abduction experience where it could have been a haunting or a residual haunting or an intelligent haunting, or it could have even been something completely different. So that's where I started looking back then, and I was proposing to the community that basically the paranormal and the UFO community need to join hands as well as the scientific community, because the overlap that I'm seeing in terms of even the trickster aspect, the orbs, objects moving, and experiencing it myself, and then meeting experiences that are saying extraterrestrial and seeing it match up with very closely to paranormal stuff. That's where I was probably ahead of most at that time, because I was even saying Skinwalker Ranch is a prime example of, you grab all the ghost hunting equipment and you apply it to there as well as UFO investigation, you're going to start to get something which is what they were doing behind the scenes. But yet people thought they were going nowhere, and we're seeing that now, and I'm doing a very similar thing here at the sanctuary. So that tie-in, as well as clearing negative influences, which, knowing some of the top paranormal investigators that have shows and what have you, what people don't understand a lot of it, like actually all the time, is they're doing a form of clearing or prayer before the investigation, sometimes during the stop possession, and afterwards to make sure things don't follow them home. And this is why I think CE5 needs that application, because you don't want to be calling up anything and everything. Because when people tell me that you can't be physically affected by these things, I've literally been choked, scratched, and seen a door ripped off its hinges. So when people tell me that, they don't know what they're talking about. Unfortunately, it's not to say I've got the answers, but I don't have all the answers. But that's physical. That's the physical ramification.
Right. And the only reason I'm saying it is because I know, like, I've been researching, investigating the paranormal for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
So Jim is, this is what I love about how our show is, because Jim is more ufology and talking to contactees, experiencers, things like that, where I am big into paranormal. But I have this theory that the ghosts, aliens, cryptids all walk on that multi-dimensional plane. You know what I mean? I kind of believe that aliens, ghosts, they're all, even cryptids, all on that same, they can jump in and out of these timelines, these dimensional lines. Me and Jim, we've talked about this numerous times, where we believe that if someone's out in the woods and they come across Bigfoot, Bigfoot can just jump right into a multi-dimensional world, and we're stuck going, did we really just see something, or is it our imagination? You know what I mean? So
I saw it firsthand in Washington State. I've had a few Bigfoot experiences, but also you go back to the 70s in the United States. How many Bigfoot sightings included orbs and even flying saucers? There was a huge spate in the 70s of that. So I think what it is that these beings are at a certain level of consciousness in their pinpoint of awareness, the illusion of an incarnation, because really we're experiencing all lives at the same time, that they understand the mechanics to traverse space and time and what they're experiencing. And it's through frequency. I think that's the absolute key. So it's through frequency operation systems that they understand.
And so it's not, in the case of Bigfoot, it's just, these are just what they're doing, morphing into an orb or dematerializing. It's just the intrinsic properties of consciousness, once you're at that level where you can unlock that or activate it, right? There's nothing, although some people have claimed to see Bigfoot inside technological crafts. But I tend to think it's just more consciousness based, faculties, in action?
Personally, I think it's all the above that we can think of and more. Because I think once we think we've got, like, just in my experience, like, I think once I think I understand or I've got it, there's something that happens that throws that out the window. But where I'm at now with all this, and I'll say two things. One thing is, it's of my opinion that we're on a treadmill in God's mind and we ain't going anywhere. All right? That's some food for thought. Now, in terms of the other thing, and I think it also comes down to the level of consciousness people are at, is that to get to the chase with everything we're even talking about, every guest that you'll ever speak to, even your own experiences, if it's not about you becoming a better person, being of service, or having love in your life, if it doesn't have that fruit, I would question the experience and the information. Because there's a whole lot of signal, like noise out there, and there's a signal, and most of it doesn't even have a signal. It doesn't mean that everything is nonsense, but that's my litmus test, and I say that to other experiences, because I go, my experience is good, bad, this, that, the other. The other aspect to look at too is that your experiences are purely about you.
Yes.
They're purely about you, but in that, what's very convoluted is it leads to a point that you work out your path and your journey, that usually you realize that you're already on it when that revelation comes through of how to play your part in the collective of what you're experiencing. That's just a common theme that I've found when I've spoken to people up to their 80s, because I get all age groups, and I probe a lot of people's minds, especially a lot of well-known research, is because, especially if you go back years, and I'm sure, Todd, you'd understand this too, you meet a lot of investigators that are well-known, and you get them by their side, and you go, so what experience did you have that gets you into it? Because they never talk about their own experience, because now they lose credibility. Right. They're a researcher. But 9 times out of 10, they'll tell you some back crazy story that they had, and they can't let it go, and that's made them obsessed with this field, and they haven't stopped.
Yes.
Everyone's got something going on to some extent, and I think even those that think they've never had an experience, it's, of my opinion, we're all experiences.
I was just thinking that today. I think everyone, if you dug in their life, you could find something that equates to an experience. And it's just most people just aren't recognizing it, or they may recognize it and then immediately, they'll fit it into their mental model and worldview, and they'll rationalize it away as this or that,
But it's deep, Jim. The questions that arise if you go down that path are huge. And people have got bills to pay. They've got kids to look after. There's social and economic turmoil in different areas of the world. And just, not everything is a conspiracy. It's like not every orb is an orb. Sometimes there's a dust particle or this, that, the other.
Yes.
There's all these different things.
Yeah, product of environment is 98%.
Yeah, but there is that fact that this affects everyone on a deep level of what happens to us after we transition.
Yes.
And are we alone? They're two big questions, what happens after death, and are we the only ones in the universe? And when you've experienced what I have, and I'm sure you guys have had your own experiences as well, I think it's a lot more stranger than what people can perceive, which took me down roads I didn't think it would take me to the stuff that I'm talking to you guys about today at this level. Like, it wasn't on my radar at this level. And I'm sure that I'm not even near the pinnacle point of understanding any of this yet. I'm on the stepping stones to that.
What is our limitation? Is physicality our stopping point on why we can't continue? Because, like, there's out-of-body experiences, people have them, and they can astro project things of this nature. Consciousness is very powerful. But what is our human stopping point? Is it because we're physical beings and haven't transitioned on to where we are just an energy form? Is that where we are kind of held up? It's kind of like our brick wall. We can only go so far and then we stop.
I think that's what we think to a certain extent. And I'm trying to convey this. So there's a being that I interface with called Penkei from Orion. Sounds bat crazy, I'll be the first to say. With experiences with this being, it will go from a physical form, then have a light-structured Merkaba, which is two opposing tetrahedrons form around it. It will start to counter-rotate and then turn into rainbow light. And then that being, with me in it at times, can rematerialize in rainbow light and Merkaba, and then it's physical in another world. Now, to the point, it's left even a mark on grass that I'd analysed, and it had a heap of cadmium in it. And there's only one other UFO case that I know that the bloke working under Heineke, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but there was a catalogue I went through of his, and there was only one other case that I know with landing trace cases where there's cadmium in it as well. So this left a physical mark in one experience, and
The
it was
Merkaba did.
Well, but it doesn't always do that. It was done to let me know that it wasn't a dream because it was so far out. And then later experiences have happened with this being where I'm in a waking state. This is no sort I get up in the middle of the night and I'm, being let out or anything like that. This is like a physical type thing. So what that shows to me, because in some of these cases, these beings are either us in the past, our ancestors, or they're our future offspring. So they're human and they can turn into light and dissolve into frequency, reappear where they want as light, and then materialize into what we perceive as physical matter within the electromagnetic spectrum. And now they're physical. So that to me, as a human, would be the capability that we've got, that I've seen and I've experienced, which has got me again going back to human potentiality. Being somebody that's levitated a couple of times, well, actually 4 times now I've levitated. Being somebody that's done telekinesis a handful of times. Somebody that practices what I believe are our natural psychic gifts, and knowing what we can do, and meeting kids that can drive around properties blindfolded in a car. Our potential is quite unbounded. I think it's just we're not educated on this. And because we're not educated on this, that's where I think that the illusion of the sort of hang up of the material world is our extent, when just from my experience, it's quite the opposite, if that makes sense, Todd.
Do you think the collective belief system of the collective consciousness is a limitation that we're stuck up against?
Beautiful question. I'm sure, and I'm assuming, do you guys know what an egregore and a tulpa is? The difference?
I vaguely,
yes. We're talking about, now you're getting into thought forms, things of that nature.
Well, this is why I said we're on a treadmill in God's mind. So a tulpa is something that one individual can manifest.
Yes.
So it could be you go into Tibet and there's these birds or bananas just drop out of thin air. I've even created one where I had John and his remote viewing team. There's a photo that I've got, and you can see it on the Australian UFO Ranch ? There, it looks like a cloud with a face in it that materialized in the portal. This is one of the protectors of the property. And I sent it to John, and they got back to me and said, "This is a tulpa. You created this intelligence, didn't you?" And I was like, that's pretty good remote viewing. Now, there's responsibility with this. Then you get into what we could say is an egregore. Now, perfect example is paranormal investigation. I've experienced this myself. I even saw it recently in one of the ghost hunting shows. It could have been about a year ago. An example is, and I'm just making up the example, but the analogy for what happens is, you go to a haunted location and there's a spirit there called Gary, and Gary's all of a sudden turned bad and everyone's having negative experiences. People come in and investigate it, find out Gary's never existed. This is just a made-up story. And because all these people, hundreds of investigators and paranormal people go in there over 5-10 years talking to Gary, they've created the intelligence to where you can go give Gary a different personality in days to weeks. Now the paranormal activity is completely different. So we, as a civilization, have created egregores in so many different scenarios that once you understand that and then you take it to a universal level, that's deep stuff to contemplate.
And thought forms, they're extremely powerful. If, for example, depending on what your religion is, the millions and millions and millions of people that worship God and Jesus, for example, if you can create a thought form entity at a haunted location, and we know that you can, where one person spins a story and it's continuously spun, and everyone that goes there now wants to talk to little Johnny that never existed, and now it exists. If we can do that with our minds, create tulpas, egregores, thought form entities, we could actually do that for anything, which means extraterrestrials, things of that nature. So it's a very powerful thing.
Or even deities, is that possible? Yes. Even if there is, like a Christ consciousness who took the form of Yeshua, at that period, the fact that, people, the collective, has just a radically different, idea of what Jesus is in their mind, where is all that going, and what is it doing? What is that manifesting? I always wonder about that.
If there was no Jesus or God, this is just hypothetical. If there was no Jesus or God, but everyone believed it to be, and it is, how do you know to differentiate between what is real and what is illusion?
Well, that's the point, is that goes out the window, because if enough people believe it, now that's the construct. And I'm sure with certain deities, it could even be people doing certain psychic exercises coming up with a name. Now, all of a sudden, these people worship this name and that entity comes into being. And now it is physical. It is tangible. And this is why, in terms of when you're working into like witchcraft or black magic or white magic, whatever magic you're doing, they understand the power of this. And those before them, in some cases, have created extremely powerful entities that they call upon. And unfortunately, in a lot of cases, these things can cost you your soul, in terms of it wants something in an exchange, and it's something that isn't of service to others. And this is where it gets very complex. But you're starting to get with where I am on this, because I'll be the first to say, most people's experiences are not extraterrestrial. There are physical extraterrestrials. I can attest to that. I know that to be true. I can't prove that, and to show you that, there's a lot of evidence I can prove.
Right.
But what I would say is, even in my cases, we're talking about such a small percentage to the vast intelligences I'm interfacing with. A lot of these beings are angelic, ascended beings, ultra-terrestrials. They're living right next to us, and I'm interfacing with them. Ancient spirits, Aboriginal spirits. So this is where it's just because of limited knowledge or education that, rightly so, most people are going to go to, this is extraterrestrial, this is a poltergeist, this is a whatever.
Yes.
Because it's enough to educate yourself that on that minimally, let alone the levels and depths that we're talking about here at this time.
Now, this is a perfect example. You had mentioned Aboriginal, and then we have our Native Americans, where we come up with Skinwalker, which is that's one of their entities. What do Aboriginal people have? Do they have something that's very similar to a Skinwalker?
Well, it's very vast. Now, I have worked and am friends with Ulukai Brendan Murray, who's king of the Raven tribe. And there's been a lot of similar information that we've talked about, along with James Gilliland, on the Pleiadian connection. They have a vast number of different types of entities that some are similar in appearance, similar stories. There's one particularly, I don't know if I got the permission to actually verbally say it on something like this, but there are similar. Look, the similarity, especially between Native American. Like, I talked to Clifford Mahudi and spent some time with him at James Gilliland's before he transitioned. as well as a number of other Native Americans. And when we were talking, it stunned me the similarities on the cultures and the stories of the cultures, even going into the Rainbow Tribes or the Rainbow Serpent and just the crossover. So there is similar stuff here in Australia. Like we've got the bunyip, which is like bunyip will come up under different sort of descriptions, which is, you could say, sort of like what you describe as elemental if you go into Europe, which is a mixture of different animals sort of combined, where, you know, fairies are loving in the West. You go to England and Ireland, fairies, you don't want to mess with them because it's totally the opposite. So you've got these huge different cultural differences. Australia and America and the natives on both sides are very similar in a lot of stories. So up to the point of even being at ancient locations and sacred sites, we've got men's area and women's area. In some areas, if you've got, let's say you're going to a men's area, you could take a woman with you as long as she's with men and vice versa. But then there's some areas that are strictly men and women only, and there can be ramifications. But going into this, what's interesting is that the story that I spoke about with James and Ulukai, and Stephen and Evan Strong have done their own work and their own side of things with the Gosford glyphs, and there's different sort of perspectives. Now, one story was with Ulukai that Uluru, you know, the middle of Australia, the big red rock, this famous, that was brought here from the. Now, the story was that most Aboriginals are apparent. And now I was told this by Aboriginals that didn't know the real meaning behind Uluru, but that it was sacred. And what I found out later, that apparently a time would come where one of the four chosen prophets, which they say is Ulukai again, who I'm friends with, was going to release certain information. And one of the certain bits of information was the meaning behind Uluru. Now, what he said to us was that Uluru and around it are the Olgas, which I think it's 12 massive, huge rocks, like massive. They were sent here from the Pleiades to smash into Earth and terraform it for the next cycle. Now, what's even more interesting is that from my own information and others' information, going into the Strongs, going into Ulukai, the Pleiadians came here and manipulated the Denisovian and created the Australian Aboriginal to incarnate into and experience the Earth human experience. Now, what I was told by some people working with scientists that were not Australian, they surmise pretty much nearly everyone on the planet, even if it's an extremely small amount, and we're not talking about my Ancestry.com test. They reckon if the proper tests are done, most people will end up finding they've got some form or percentage, even very small, Australian Aboriginal in them, to where I even saw photos of Aboriginals in, I think it was Africa and Japan, and both of the stories was that they were there, the Australian Aboriginal were there before them. And this is even up to recent times. One of the last Aboriginals, he wouldn't, I think it was in Japan, he wouldn't have a relationship with the Japanese woman because he wanted to be with his own kind, so he decided to be the last and died out, transitioned. So when you look at these, even Aboriginal remains found in America, apparently, before Native Americans were supposedly there, like going back a ridiculous amount of time. It's not my special field, but it is brought in because I work with Ulukai and I'm friends with Ulukai, as well as my own connections and experiences. But then you go into the Native Americans talking about their connection to the Pleiades, their connection to Orion, their connection to even other star systems like Taurus, Sirius, just like you've got with the original people here. But then they talk too about the spirit realm. And like I say to people, when you've had the experiences that I have, what you even realize, not only are extraterrestrials wanting to ascend to new heights, extraterrestrials also have angels and demons that they still have to interface and interact with as well. So what's that saying? It shows how big and beautiful God is, but how convoluted the whole situation is at the same time.
Yes.
That just totally kind of shatters my model that they have angels and demons or beings higher than them helping them or trying to bring them down. What do you mean by demons? Can you be more specific as far as what do they have in the way of
I would say they're angelic in nature, but they're peace because they're at service to self, not service to others. So I had an experience where I was taken. All right, so let's go back to another experience. I might be a bit vague on it because we're talking over a decade ago. I was in my lounge room one night, laying on a couch. It was a leather couch, a green one, sort of like the setup I've got here. And I think I was listening to maybe a podcast. I can't be certain on that. And I started to vibrate, like my whole body started to vibrate, and I freaked out and I got up. And it stopped. Well, it happened again, probably around the same time the next night. I got up in the lounge room and I was engulfed in light, and I appeared in a cave where there was a flying saucer in the distance that looked very similar to the sports model, like Bob Lazar mentions. There was an orb above it with the grey, and it was more like a grey, not the Guardians that I spoke about. And in front of me were 3 reptilians. 2 of them were about 6'2". There was one that was a bit shorter, and they had ridges on each side here. And they were greenish, brownish yellow. And behind them on the wall, I don't know how many foot this would be, but I reckon 5 meters by 5 meters, was a black, what looked like a television screen that if I didn't look at it, I could see a neon light structured earth that looked like it was being monitored. But if I looked back at it, I couldn't see what was projected. I had to not look at it to see what the screen had on it, but it was projected like a 3D projection. From that experience, which would be probably the most neutral reptilian experience I've had, there was a mention of basically, and why me, I've got no idea, let your people know that we're not all bad. Basically, the telepathic communication was, we're breaking up into factions because we can't evolve any further than where we're at because of our intention and what we're doing. It's the same with dark, demonic, the opposites of the angels. They have what seem like magic abilities to you and I, with telepathy, with teleportation, materializing, doing paranormal stuff. But depending on your level of consciousness, depends on what you've got access to in terms of abilities, is the way it's been explained to me. Not just with reptilian, but even things at that dark state, that they're sort of tapped and capped at a certain level, and there's all this other stuff they could do. But this is the duality of source, that even with where I'm at now, I don't see good and bad anymore, because again, it comes down to that analogy of we're on a treadmill in God's mind, but it doesn't mean I condone child trafficking, the dark stuff that's, all the stuff we could go on with the cabal that's going on. But it's beyond good and bad. It's really an individual soul journey, but a collective one too. And not just for the human race. It's that, and then that extraterrestrially and multidimensionally.
So, Pete, let me ask this. Getting back to the tulpas, the Gregor-gors, the thought form entities. Now, if we can create all these different things, which we know that we can, for example, the Pleiades, the Greys, the Mantids, reptilians, how do we know if it's really them? How can we trust them for what they're saying?
Awesome question. To me, it's the fruit of the information and the feeling.
Okay.
All right. So it's like with Shiji, this being from the Pleiades that I interface with. Now, I've said to people, and even when you read the books, the channeled material, I tell people I don't believe everything from any of them. There's fruit in there, but why I say that is, and I worked this out years ago, they would give me a white lie, because if they didn't tell me that first, I wouldn't understand where they were going. As an example, reincarnation. So you go with that model, and then all of a sudden you understand all your lives are happening at the same time. Well, you're not going to understand that unless you first are open to the idea of reincarnation. That's why I don't set anything in concrete to an extent, because of exactly that, what I've just mentioned there. So it's the fruit. It comes back to what I said before. How does it help you be a better person, be of service, and bring love into your life? Does it meet that criteria with that intelligence and with the message? And how is it empowering you to empower yourself? Because again, working with thousands of people, I have people, and it's not belittling anyone. My guides told me this. I couldn't give a crap what they told you. If they're truly your guides, what I've learned from experience, they will let you make a mistake. If it's extremely bad and there's other entities at play, they will step in without you even knowing, because it's crossing what we deem as universal law. But they want you to do what you want to do, and they will advise with a perspective, but they ain't going to guilt trip you. Because, people go, oh, my guides told me this and now my life's gone to crap and all this has happened. It's like, that ain't good if that's what's going on, and I'm not sure that's probably your guide if that's the case. We're steering the ship. It's other entities. So this is where, what's the fruit and how is it empowering you? Because one of the biggest messages in recent times from my own contacts has been from a number of, or we could say a conglomerate of extraterrestrial and ultra-terrestrial and angelic intelligences under, we could say, the headline of you keeping as sovereign as you can be. That even when disclosure happens on a level that's, let's say, on the news and public, we can't, just because an extraterrestrial race, we might be part of, you could say, a federation or a council or whatever, and they seem all good and they've got a great civilization and they've overcome what we've overcome, they could still rip us off in a trade deal. Like, I'm just throwing it out there. Now, that's not a good thing, is it? So what it is they've told me we need to empower us and be in our own power. And if anything is stopping that, that's a red flag. That to me is very valuable and very positive information.
Yeah, and
so if we have an extraterrestrial intervention or species that makes itself known and begins to help us, would you think a line is crossed there, or do you think that, or what do you think? As far as can a benevolent extraterrestrial race assist us in some fashion or to some degree without kind of violating universal law or without compromising our natural growth and evolution?
It's a very laid question in terms of that, because I know for a fact that we're already got deals going on and we're working with them. It's not a public thing, yes, of course. It's more laid than a secret space program or this program or that program. It is something that is going to have to come back to us, from my understanding, of putting humanity first, because there's all these deals and things already going on, but when that becomes public, this is where the tire meets the road, so to speak, in terms of this is a whole new playing field, because you've now got a situation where I don't know the exact numbers, but you're talking like, how many Muslims are there? How many Christians are there? How many Jews are there? How many Hindus are there? Now, there's all these different people that believe in supernatural things from their model, and that's okay. But it's like, all right, so you believe in angels, demons, gods, goddesses, this, that, the other, but when it hits the fan, so to speak, this is a whole new different thing, because now it's not something that you've got seers in different religions or people are having experiences with angels and demons and this, that, the other. This is now, right, there's extraterrestrials, there are angels and demons, and now it takes the model to a whole bigger thing. So there's going to be the need for people like us to just talk and listen to people within our communities and our families, because really we're all around the planet, and that's where we're going to be the actual ones steering the ship. Now, the government mandates and models, you go back to the Brookings Institute report where it would destroy civilization, all these different models that are out there. I think it comes back to what I've said before, is human potentiality. We don't understand how powerful we are and how we can adapt. There's so many things that have happened in human history that we go, this is happening and we're going to be screwed. And it doesn't end up that way. We get through it. I don't think myself or anyone's got the answers to what you've asked in terms of how do we adapt and what's going to happen to us and it's a great question, but I think that's purely an egregore situation of what we make that situation to be as a collective will determine the outcome. But what I can tell you is the power of love in the heart shouldn't be underestimated. Now, then don't quote me to be exact, but with heart math, which I've studied and I've done a course in as well, what I can tell you is from memory, you can have a room full of upset people and somebody that goes into heart coherence walk into that room and they can change the entire room. One person in a room full of negative, upset people, one person in heart coherence breathing in and out of the heart, walking into that setting can transform that room. One person. So if you've even got a small amount of Earth's population holding space in a loving space for the best outcome for all, that can change the egregore situation that can occur rather than it being about, shoot 'em up aliens, this, that, the other. So we need to know power.
Yeah. And is that the primary thing that we ought to be doing is evolving ourselves, getting to that state of consciousness where we're resonating at a love frequency, or is there a big job that still has to be done with information and bringing out information and persuading people, or are we kind of beating a dead horse? I hate to use that analogy, but I can't think of another. Are we wasting a lot of time trying to convince logically people of these things? Or
I don't think it's a waste of time, but it's of my opinion that most people don't need to know what we're talking about here today, and I'll tell you why. If people were just good people, we would transform this world in ways that we can't even imagine. So long as you're not a beep head, an idiot. And this is where I say to people don't need to know what you and I know. If these people, let's say friends and family that aren't into this, if they would purely even give the shirt off their back to help another human, if they're just purely good people, if we're purely good people, does all this even matter? Now, of course, there is a flip side to that there are dark forces, there's manipulative forces, this, that, the other. But if we were all good people, we wouldn't be resonating for these things at a frequency for these things to even be able to occur.
Right.
So when people come to me about, their partners or their kids or friends and family, and I know how I went years alone in my experience, so I understand how lonely it can be. But it's of my opinion that for those people, sometimes the advice I give, again, it's a circumstantial thing. But if the people that you love are good, really good people, like just genuinely good people, if they saw somebody who needs help with their groceries, getting in the back of the truck, opening a door for somebody, smiling at somebody, very simplistic things, they've got nothing to worry about. And in most cases, as I say as well, like depending on who I'm talking to and what level they're at, we already know all this out of this existence. We already know everything. We might have amnesia in the human body, but that's why I laugh at it. So to what extent does it matter? And it's not saying, look, the disclosure effort, this, that, the other, it's not worth it. I think it's one of those things that it's going to happen how it's going to happen. And I think it's going to happen without any notice. It's like all these things you hear on this date, this is going to happen, and then it doesn't happen. I'll give you an example. Have you heard of the RV, the financial reset? All right. Now, I know these things are real. I know that the med beds are real. I've been in a lot of talks with people from the UN to the Vatican to different things that are aware of a lot of different things. And I even at one meeting told somebody to go and screw themselves. That was probably one of the most richest people on the planet, because I'm sick of hearing excuses. If you've got that much money, why aren't you putting it back into the world like you want to? Because of these ramifications and that ramifications. In one trip to the United States, I met 3 women that didn't know each other, and each one of them had a husband that recently to that time committed suicide because they were financially ruined because they got told the financial reset was going to happen on a certain date. I've said before, what we say and what we do affects everyone and everything, and that is a prime example. And It's not saying these people shouldn't have done that and put their faith into somebody else. The people killed themselves. This isn't no laughing matter or who's right or who's wrong. It is what we do and what we say is should be taken bloody serious, or every thought that comes out of our mouth, because this is the type of stuff that can occur from just one person's actions.
I think we should, especially in this realm, just entirely give up with trying to make predictions. To me, it just seems like there's been no benefit and only harm in trying to, say, I think, this is going to happen, in a year, or this is going to happen in 2025. It just seems like we could just do away with that, and it would just be a benefit, and I don't think you can make predictions. I think just the reality, the consciousness of reality that we live in is just fluid like that, and by its own nature, it's just
that's the perfect thing. An analogy, I'll just say, look, there is a time that I did prophecies, predictions. I did it so if they were wrong, I would ruin my reputation, and it was short-lived. It was a few times with a terrorist type event that happened in Australia, earthquakes, magnitudes, dates, times, locations. Even recently, I couldn't tell you how many people have seen me just say what time and where the crafts are going to appear, and then they appear. I've even done it for television shows, but for some reason they never show it on them. Go figure. I've had responses why in some cases, but my point with this is, even though that can occur, I know that it's more along the lines of what you're saying, which is it's like liquid. Now, Shiji, again, had explained to me one time that from the 2012 period, we would be hitting a phase, and I never got anything on doom and gloom. It was, we're going into a frequency of create your own reality time, which is what I feel we're in now. And I tell people, don't just because this is saying it, that's saying it, whatever's saying whatever, you're the creator of this. You're the creator of this, and like you can create that outcome. Good, possibly it could be an egregore that you create, whatever that is going to be. But you don't have to settle for it. What do you want?
How much are we though an individual creator? I mean, what is just the final analysis on that question of how much we're contributing to the manifestation in the world, and compared to the collective and everybody? To me, that's just still a question that I don't have a clear answer to.
I don't think there is one. I think it would depend on the intention, the energy, and the drive. Like I said before, like 1% of one person walking into a room can change the energy. That's an example, but you have enough people hell bent on a certain thing. I think they can change the course of something as well. I don't think there's a one-stop shop answer or mathematical equation to what you're saying that we could go by. But I think when it comes down to it, it's really intention and strength behind that intention. Partly.
Yeah, but if one person can change it, then a higher dimensional, if it so chooses, like at the being at the Christ consciousness level, let's say, could come here and change it if they chose to.
Yeah, so this is a really good thing that you're getting into, and I've got to use analogies here for this. So let me just say for a moment, I'll use something extreme. It's just what's coming to mind. But let's say a woman is sexually abused, all right, and somebody in the spiritual community will go, "Well, that was part of your soul contract." Come on. Now, I will say, in the odd case, it could have been. I don't know what deal they've got going on, but what I'll say, in most cases, no, somebody's free will has imposed on another person's free will, and now it can change them, alter their path, direction, this, that, the other. My point to what you're saying is there can be the person that come and makes change, but if somebody else doesn't want that because of their free will, they can now insert the situation and be an adversary, an enemy, be the negative to the positive. So this is why it's like there is, and I'll say there is soul contracts, this, that, the other. It's not putting that down, but this is where there's a cop out going, oh, well, everything's playing out for our highest good, this, that, the other. No, in some cases, again, somebody's free will is going to come in, and what happens is if people sit there and acquiesce and surrender, you get a situation that we've gone through the last few years, but enough people said no matter what side you're on, something's not right, and we've seen a transformation. Because I can tell you now, in the last 5 years, the amount of people that have come to me that weren't into any of this, but they've come in it from what's happened in world events the last few years, and they've opened up to this. It had an adverse effect for what I would deem as the lower light. A lot of people woke up when they thought a lot of people were going to acquiesce even more. So the free will component is the if factor. And what I'll say to you to take on board, and again, you know, I'm only 42. It's not like I got all the answers or anything. And you've been investigating this for a hell of a long time as well. But you got this answer and this answer, which is black and white. The answers in the middle is so many shades of grey. So just think of it like that, because so many people come to me go, it's this or it's this. And it's like, I can't even answer that, because I could start to even go through 6 different answers in between the yes and the no. And that's even opening up more. And then it opens up a whole lot of can of worms, and either people are there or they're not. And it's not right or wrong with where they're at. It's just they're at where they're at. But that is how convoluted this can, you know, the directions you can go in this.
And you know that's entirely true, Pete, because like you mentioned, soul contract. People say, "Oh, well, that's just your soul contract." It's just like when everything goes bad, they're saying, "Well, what's Mercury retrograde?"
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yes, that was very good.
But I will say quickly, there is stuff to astrology, and what I'll say is, even for astrology, you use that as what you can rise above. You go, all right, here's a framework. All right, at this period, there's this going on, but you don't let it determine whether you go outside or what you're going to do with your life. You go, all right, this is a circumstance. I'm aware of it. What can I do to rise above it and still do what I'm going to do?
Yes.
So because I can say now, especially there was one lady once that did an astrology thing, and it wasn't just where the planets were, it was where the star systems were. And I tell you what, it was eerily accurate, way more than what it would be otherwise. And I was like, there's definitely something to this energetic construct of where planets and star systems and satellites and, you know, timing. It's a huge thing. But no, a really good point that you can't let those things just rule, you know, as a mandate in your life.
Yes, I agree 100%.
I really wanted to get into, and this is kind of jumping to a fairly different subject here, but we focus on abductions on this channel a lot, and you had a really interesting abduction experience, and I vaguely remember it, and I'm not even sure how to describe it. I think it might have been the one where you went to Mary Rodwell. And regression. And didn't it start out where you were driving somewhere and you had a missing time episode and you missed a turn going to you all of a sudden you came to, and I think that was a really interesting abduction experience, if I recollect right, where you came into contact with some beings who I think claim to be from Vega or something, which is a kind of
no.
Is that different?
Yeah. So I can get. Do you want me to go into that?
If you
just
can,
yeah. So and why? It's like the regression was. I think Mary didn't say anything, but I'd say frustrating for her. Probably more frustrating for her with frustration at me, because the beings kept saying that I know, and they were very hesitant to like say a lot. And there was other regressions I got done. I've only had 3, I think 4 done, to the point they'll turn the cameras on and off and the lights on and off and this weird stuff. Like people were sitting in the room in a couple of these. And but it was more entertainment. There was nothing for me, really. Like it's not belittling. Like Mary's great at what she does, but it was like more I wasn't listening to the psychic side or my experiences. It's like if I couldn't have you there with me, film it and it documented, I wasn't believing it. That's how I was back then. It's like I needed this to be so tangible. So I don't have many missing time experiences I'll say that I'm aware of, because up to that point I thought everything was conscious as well. That's why I went to Mary, and Mary actually, we gave it a bit of time because we thought, hey, maybe I'll pull this information out, because Mary was, I think back then, sort of could see that I knew a lot of my experiences. It wasn't, like abduction or, missing time sort of stuff, though there was some weird phenomena going on and still does. But what happened that time was I was with a friend, and first we went to a town called Beechworth, which is a really haunted location, a really well-known haunted town. Basically, the town's probably one of the most haunted places on the planet to me. It's full of golden quartz and limestone with underground water creeks underneath the town. And there's an area there where there was these Chinese graves because they used to get killed and robbed for their gold at night. So we went to this area just to sightsee, and then we were going to go to Mount Buffalo, which I've taken John Vivanco and James Gilliland and a few others to the base. There's a base in the mountain. They're sort of like Mount Adams, but much smaller.
An ET base?
Yeah. In the backside of the mountain there. And the funny thing is, I didn't tell them anything, and they got me to drive to the same spot in the same location and said, this is where it is. Blind.
Mm.
So, from recall. But no, I'm sure it was both of them were blind. But what happened on this day was I knew this turn off, and this turn off never appeared. And all of a sudden, I can't even describe it. I don't know in America, though. I've driven a lot in America. On the side of the road here, we've got these little line ridges that if you start to veer off the road and you go over the line, it makes like this rumble bump noise through the car to sort of steer you back.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Get that times it by 100, and this road doesn't even have that on it, right? So what's happening is I'm driving with a friend of mine at the time, and I'm getting frustrated because I'm like, where's this turn off? Like, I drive this area all because my parents have got a cabin at the bottom of Mount Buffalo. They did for like years, like 30 years. I was going up there nearly every holiday and what we had. So I knew this area like the back of my hand. And this turn off never appears. And then we get to the end of this road that gets us where we've got to go anyway. But I wanted the shortcut. So we turn onto this road, and all of a sudden, do you know what a didgeridoo is?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah,
that's what I was saying, like those bumps on the side of the road when you drive over it and it goes through you. What happened to both of us was it sounded like, to me, the only description I had, like an angel playing a didgeridoo. It was etheric, it was angelic, but it went through the whole car and us. I'm even winding down the window and I can still hear it. And it's like, what the hell is that noise? I'm not thinking to look above or there's a craft over us. I don't still know exactly what occurred. And then that went for, no word of a lie, at least 5 minutes till we hit the outskirts of a town called Myrtleford.
Did everyone hear it, or did you just hear it?
Both, like, it was me and a friend in the car. We both could hear. Like, we're like, what is that noise? Because it just, it wasn't the car, but we couldn't. It was going through us. Like,
and it was like a didgeridoo, or it was.
Yeah. The only way I've said it to Mary, I said, imagine the sound of a didgeridoo going through you, but it was like angelic.
That's like vibrational too, man. When someone's playing one of those. So yes.
Yeah. So it could have been going for nearly 10 minutes. I can't remember the length of this road, but either way, we get to the outskirts of a town called Myrtleford. And all of a sudden, I've got this thought, I've got to turn right here, which takes us to the back way, Mount Buffalo, which is the way that you don't want to go. Because if you go that way, you can't actually go up the mountain. You can only go to the back side of it. And I said, I've got to turn down here. I don't know why. I've got to go down this road. And so we're like, all right, I turn down there and we get down to a place called Lake Buffalo, which is a huge, beautiful lake. From memory, no one was there. But if you go there most times during the week, even back then, no one was there. It was usually a weekend. People bring some boats out, some jet skis, a picnic, but no one was there. And I can't remember if it was extra time or missing time, but the time to both of us, I can't remember who it was that looked at the car clock, but it didn't make sense, the time. And so we're like, that's weird. We get out in sync of each door. We look above, and there's the hall, the bottom of a machine, craft, whatever, right above the car, and then it just disappeared. And we're like, what? You know, what was that? And we only sat there for probably 2 minutes before we got back in the car, and we didn't feel right, and we headed back home. We thought stuff going up Mount Buffalo. What the hell just happened? Because like this person was an experience as well. I'm an experiencer. I'm used to remembering stuff. And that's what led to going to see Mary, because I told Mary when I got home, like, this thing sounded like a bloody didgeridoo. Was it a craft above us the whole time? Because when we go to where I drove to, which I hadn't been to for years, and we weren't meant to go there, but I had to go down this road when we got out, here's the hall of a craft above us, broad daylight, and then it's not there, and the time doesn't make sense. It's like I was used to understanding my experiences and knowing what they were to a certain extent. And because I had no answers for these things, it was extremely frustrating. So that's what led to going to see Mary about that.
And then what was uncovered during that regression, excuse me. I thought there was something about it was a gray type being and then a humanoid or something.
So what happened, and it was really unique, because you can see me convulsing on the video, and you can see it in ways that doesn't look like like people say, like, there's no way you could be even faking that. The way the body was reverberating on the couch and pulsating, and it just pops up. I remember being in the body and then popping out, like in a non-physical form, now looking down on my physical body, and almost like a Brady Bunch setup in the air to the right of my body, with squares with different forms of intelligences in each square, including the Elohim, lion beings, cat beings, what I call the brown Orions. And what happened was, because I'm experiencing this in real time till I popped out of the body and I'm saying what I'm telling you, what happened was I was on board, and yeah, it was a craft. Sometimes I don't know where I am, so I can't say it's a craft. It could be anywhere, but I knew that I was on board this machine, and it's actually more like an acorn shape, and everything's dark. But coincidentally, I had an experience with this being, I believe, before this experience, if I got the timeline right, and it looks like E.T. from the movie E.T., but it's darker brown, and its eyes are black, and you can. It looks like it's got no mouth. And the first experience that's before what we're talking about, it shined a torch underneath its head, like in a scary movie. You know, you shine a torch and the light's coming up like this. And I'll tell you what now, I call this being the wise one. And then later it told me that it's from near GNZ 11. They don't die. GNZ 11, the galaxy GNZ 11. Yeah, it's from near there, and they don't. Them and certain mantid races. It's not a mantid, but its race and a certain mantid race, they apparently don't die. Like, you can kill them, but they don't. Their lifespan's forever if they're not killed. And it's now in Orion, helping out with different projects with different Orion intelligences. So what happened? Because I didn't know all this at that time. I'm on board this craft now with a friend. There is, again, a light appearing underneath it, and it's looking at me like this. Like, I mean, it's like Ace Ventura, you know, with the camera, how he goes, "I can't do it, Captain." This is the sense of humor this being's got. And
so this was definitely humorous, the light shining with the intent of being humorous.
Man, it would make any comedian, you know, go to, like, just look like nothing. It's real, and I know people that have interacted with it. And they say the same thing. And there's a race of them. Some of them white, but this one's dark brown. And there's smaller ones, but they look more like stocky brown greys, but they're stocky and they're brown, and they're the smaller ones. And there's other ones that look like Roger from American Dad, that are the tall ones that are about 5 foot, that are brown also. So whoever's made ET and written American Dad, they know something. But on this time, it was the small ones, and it was this ET looking being. And what I understood was that there was children on board to do with hybrid project. And I won't say much more about that because I've copped a lot of shit over the years, and excuse the language, but it's something that's sort of like you can go into so many tangents then, but that's what that was actually about. But this being appears in so many different circumstances of my experiences that it's almost like the first time I've ever said this or even thought of it, it's like MacGyver. If somebody needs assistance with somebody, you can call this dude in and he's going to find some way to help out somehow. Like, that's what this being's like. And in this case, he was there for part of a hybrid project thingo. There's been other experiences that have got nothing to do with children that he's there as well. And he's extremely wise. You feel like he's Jedi-like, and it's like one of the most intelligent beings you'll ever come across. But it does have Jedi-like abilities. So it's been around for billions of years. Like, literally, it hasn't died. It doesn't incarnate. It as a being, its purpose is to incarnate and experience universe, like its existence in this form, and to master physicality, which it's the way I get it. It's sort of frustrated with us not realizing like how much it's achieved, but it's looking at us going, you guys are like a steroid version of me with what you can do from a material standpoint. And it's almost like a Jedi. So what's that saying about what we're capable of and we don't understand?
Wow.
So there's been a relationship with this being it precedes this, but this is sort of when I woke up to it.
Why hasn't anyone been able to bust out of our limitations? I mean, people have to some extent, but it seems very still limited. Why does that seem to be axiomatic that, no one can, just suddenly levitate at will, or with ease, or move stuff around, with telekinesis? It seems like a lot of people, believe that, we can. No, we can. You just have to, develop and activate this, and we can definitely do this. But you just don't see anyone out there, that seems to possess this.
No, including me. This is what I do here a lot of the time when I'm not doing readings or events. Is I'm practicing these things. It intrigues me, the mechanics, and I've done those things, but I can't do it on demand. I'm practicing to do it on demand, but I can't do it. I've met yogis and masters, and my answer to that, and it's not to be a cop-out because that is such a brilliant question, but it's of my opinion that, again, we're in God's mind. And I think that when that occurs as something that we can do on demand, it's going to be organic in God's mind. But the flip side to what I'm saying is the reason the way things are the way they are, including why can't we do those things on demand, is because of non-human intelligence that haven't got our best interests at heart. And David Icke says it best when he said, just because you wouldn't do it doesn't mean they wouldn't do it. If people start to understand that there is an opposing force, which, I call the lower light, the fallen Elohim with the reptilians and all these other entities, if people understand that what you think and in terms of like rules, that goes out the window when you're dealing with them. There are no rules. And because of that, the world and the universe is in the situation it is in, as well as I believe they manipulate contactees, experiences, spiritual teachers, spiritual centers. Like you name anything, I think to some extent there's been some form of controlling manipulation going on. These entities can be around let's say we went to an ashram, and it's not saying don't go to an ashram. I'm just using an example. This is why I clear constantly at my events here at the sanctuary. People are like, why is Pete clearing this? Because I know when they're about. You could have 3, let's say, negative greys that are psychically connecting and now getting cords into people's minds. And all of a sudden, they start having psychic attacks, thinking their worst fears, this, that, the other, or this person's thinking this about me, this, that, the other. And all of a sudden, it changes the whole dynamic. And they're feeding off that. This is what happens, is that if people are not trained in clearing negative influences, you will also get this at haunted locations. This is why asylums, hospitals, jails, schools, places where there's huge amounts of population and usually in traumatic situations, this stuff is like a festival for them, for negative influences, because they go in doing these types of things. So what happens is people that are doing the work that we're doing, they get a focal point, or these facilities or these locations that have happenings and certain things that now comes into play. And because people like us are at the forefront of this, whether talking about it, educating people, this is where I think these things come in and they block, to an extent, some of these abilities or information. And that's why I always come back to, how does it help me be a better person, be of service, and bring love into my life? Because that's information I can resonate with. I can see fruit to that information. But there is also a flip side to that as well. This is the grey area, even with some of the Tibetan masters, where they've been able to take photos and of paranormal things like myself, but they don't do it too often or show what they get often, because they believe that can stop them having those abilities. So there's always an if or a but in different areas of this type of thing of the answer. But again, I want you to follow like everyone to follow their heart. It's just some food for thought, those opinions. And, rightly so, I think, because it's from experience seeing these entities and what they will do. And they want to cause havoc and manipulation. They want to cause question. They want to cause doubt. And if we allow it, this is a prime example of what happens. We don't really know our full capability because we get hijacked part of the time.
Mm-hmm. Do you think if just word got out, that what we thought was possible is not right, and much more than that is possible, and just enough people collectively understood that at a very deep level, it wouldn't matter what they did manipulatively to suppress our abilities? That maybe that's the ultimate thing, really, that's holding us back, is that we're all kind of creating the rules of this reality. And once there's a critical mass of us that believe otherwise, or believe, a more expanded version of reality, that it will be that's all that it takes, basically.
It definitely is a possibility. And the reason why I'll explain that is the way it's been explained to me is that with great abilities comes great consciousness. That's why you attain these abilities. So what happens is the level of consciousness you would do something at down here is not what you would do when you're up here, because you're now operating from a different level of consciousness. So it's almost like at this level up here, you've got access to great technology and great things that could destroy things. But because you're at this level of technology, you wouldn't do harmful things because you're above it. So there is a point where you would let bygones be bygones. It doesn't mean it's okay, but move on. It's like, why attach your energy to the past and what's been when you understand what's going on now, and you're out of that frequency to where it's no longer affecting you. But the thing is, you have to remember, as I say to people, and this sort of stunts them a bit because I don't know what to say, but think about this. Even at the level of the angelics, they're still at war with the demons.
Are they?
Well,
that's something that I always wondered. I mean, sort of mainstream Christians definitely seem to believe this. And I guess there's some, anecdotal, things that you can point to that seem to suggest that. But I've always felt that at that level, they are living in oneness, and they see, the essential, the essentialness of everything, and even, the extremity of the negative polarity.
Some are, but what you also have available at that point when you've ascended to those states, you could say reconnected with your angelic Elohim self, is there are a lot that can go and create their own universe, their planes of existence, as it's being revealed to me. But there's also free will that you can be in that spot. But do you evolve in those spots? And if you can, great. But what you see in a lot of cases that I've experienced is that you want to be of service. And so what a lot of beings do is they want to be of service. They want to be a spirit guide to others. They want to assist others. So what happens, right, when you're praying and you're clearing, you're calling upon God, source, creator, and your guides and your higher self. These beings are coming in to assist you to assist yourself in these spiritual battles, whether it's thought forms or even attachments, physically being affected by attachments or entities or attacks, even from other people. There are people out there that try remote influencing others, that send entities to others to harm others. So what you've got is you do have angelic intelligences up there. They're not sitting up there where it's all love and light. They're going, hey, we've still got work to do. We've got to come down, because that's part of their operation for some of the angelics and some of those that rise to the occasion and ascend. That's what they've chosen to do, is become a guide to others. So this is where it's not just like a black and white thing, but that's, you understand that with clearing and prayers. It's because it's a universal law situation. So the universal law situation is you can't directly influence. So what's happening is you've got a situation where the dark forces are working through a construct to control and manipulate this world from behind the scenes, from possession, from manipulation and thought forms, whatever. And then it's like, how do we assist that? Well, this is where I come up with Operation Starseed, where higher evolved souls that can deal with it and have experienced this have come down, incarnated into the experience to help the human race help themselves and uplift themselves. And the angels and the other beings, we could say like them flying around in the helicopters and the B-2 bomber and all this other stuff, helping where they can, because there's a huge operation that's going on, and it's Operation Liberation, but it's something that is an ascension. Now, what is an Operation Liberation for? You could say yourself, but I'm inclined to say if you look at somebody doing the inner work and meditation and wanting to ascend and liberate themselves from the chains of karma and shed the physical form and go into an ascended state, that's what we're doing as a collective. We're doing that on a collective level, whether we realize it or not, whether it's ancestral trauma, whether it's through the trauma that we're living. We're trying to just be happy. That's all we're trying to do. We want to get by in life, but the thing is, we're not educated on radical acceptance, which is being okay that you're not okay with certain things. And we're not educated on there's going to be some good times and there's going to be some crap times. There's always going to be a bill coming every month. There's always going to be, you need to brush your teeth twice a day. You need to have a shower every day at least. Like, these are things that people go, oh, I have to do this. But the thing is, be excited. Do it with joy. Be happy that you've got this existence. We're trying to look at life as a cup half empty rather than a cup half full. And this is where these entities have got us if we're thinking in that mindset.
Yeah.
The liberation
and all those things, that we don't want to do. If we were just actually present while we were doing them, we would actually find that there's great pleasure and enjoyment in doing anything, even mundane things.
Just being conscious of what you're doing, being conscious of your thoughts. That's all it takes.
Well, I guess we should probably wrap it up here.
Yes.
Hours.
Pete, thank you so much for coming on. I mean, you are a wealth of knowledge, man, and it was an honor to hear your take on things and what you experienced.
No, thank you to both of you. It's been, I never know where these things are going to go, but it's been great to have a couple of minds we can go pretty deep on a number of different things on, and I think Spirit took it where it needs to go. But thank you to both of you for having me on and inviting me. And I don't want anyone to believe me. I've got nothing to prove, but just if anything, I'd just like this to be food for thought for all of us and those watching as well.
Yes. And I believe this will resonate very well with our listeners and viewers, because, it takes someone like you to tell your stories and others going, oh, wow, I had something very similar to that. And this guy, he relates to what I'm saying. So, yes, it's very, very awesome.
No, well, thank you for what you're doing as well, because it lets people know that they're not alone, and it's educating. This is the problem that we could say is at the foundation of this. We're just not educated on these things, and you guys are doing that with this show. So thank you for what you're doing as well.
Yes, thank you. And I'm gonna leave this this show tonight with this. What we uncovered tonight goes beyond lights in the sky or memories behind closed eyes. It's about the hidden layers of reality and our role in waking up to them. As Peter shared, truth isn't always black and white. It lives in the gray, in the questions, in the spaces in between. And maybe, just maybe, our greatest power isn't in proving what's out there, but in remembering what's already in here. You are part of something vast, ancient, and still unfolding. And the moment you realize that, the game changes. Until next time, keep your eyes open, your spirit grounded, and your heart aligned with truth. Thanks, everybody, for joining us and listening in. We hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll talk to you on the next adventures of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure. Thanks, everybody. Thank you for tuning in with us tonight. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and follow to receive notifications when new content is made available. A Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure is looking to talk with ufologists, researchers, investigators, contactees, abductees, channelers, and more for upcoming shows. Or if you have stories, photos, videos, questions, suggestions, or comments, please contact us through Messenger or email us at paranomalypodcast@gmail.com. And you can also visit us at paranomalypodcast.com for more content and information, including all our social links. I thank you again for watching or listening, and we hope to see you on the next episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure.